Hey, it's Thursday, May 28, 2020, and you've tuned into the Rebel News live stream. Welcome aboard, folks. Now, usually, Ezra Levent, the big boss man himself, he's in this chair, but Ezra's still working on that special project. And quite frankly, I hope it goes on and on and on, because I just so enjoy spending an hour every afternoon, well, not every afternoon, every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon with the lovely and talented and well-traveled Sheila Gunn-Reid, my guest co-host. How are you doing there, Sheila?
Holy David, I'm tired. I'm going to be honest with you. I am not one of those people that, I survive on very little sleep or whatever. But yesterday I had a very exciting day, and I think we'll get to that in a second. But first, we should tell everybody what exactly we're doing here before we get this show right off the rails,
yes.
Right from the beginning.
Because that never happens.
Oh, God. We get this, we prepare, we take some time. I do a little research so I know what I'm talking about before we go on air. And then we just go on air and then just drop the whole plan right in the garbage and just shoot the breeze for an hour. And thankfully, people are pretty tolerant of how quickly you and I get right off track. Right. But anyway, and I'm doing it right now. What we're doing here today is we're hosting Ezra's. Normally, Ezra hosts this. It's the daily 1 hour live stream. And it gives our viewers a chance to interact with us and support us and interact with each other. So there's a live chat going on, and you can always see a little lively discussion happening there, friendships forming, bonds of people coming together, united over certain causes. But it also gives David and I a chance to interact with each other, and our viewers at home can support the work that we do completely of their own free will by pitching into something called the Super Chat. What it will do is you toss a little money in the pot, and it'll highlight your query, question, or comment, and it'll upend it to the screen. And if I see it, I'll read it. If I don't see it, or if I miss it, then Mr. Producer Justin will send it to me in a message, and David and I will read it. We'll comment on it, and if there's something you'd like us to discuss, just drop it in the Super Chat.
100%. And Sheila, we should begin the show with a clarification, a correction, and even an apology. We have been having this running gag of patting ourselves on the back, and I always prefaced it by saying a Steve Lombardi, aka Brooklyn Brawler, pat on the back, and a viewer was so kind this morning to correct the record that it wasn't Steve Lombardi. It was Barry Horowitz, a.k.a. Al Horowitz, who did the pat on the back shtick. So I'm dreadfully sorry. And how is it a couple of wrestling buffs like us, Sheila? How did we both think this was Steve Lombardi? Did Steve Lombardi appropriate the pat on the back at some point in his career? Because I don't get it. I don't know how we had this mistake running for months. So to all the wrestling fans out there who are part of the Rebel audience, and I don't know what that number is, I am sorry that I attributed the self-pat on the back to Steve Lombardi and not to the rightful owner, Barry Horowitz. What do you have to say about that, Sheila?
David, I think we should give ourselves a good old-fashioned Barry Horowitz pat on the back for responding positively to criticism and being willing to correct ourselves on air. So let's pat ourselves on the back.
There you go. And besides, I don't have the flexibility to give myself a self-kick in the ass. So there you go. But Sheila, the reason why you are tired, it's because you were doing a little flying in the last 24 hours, and it wasn't for a vacation or for socializing. You went to cover an important story in Vancouver. So why don't we run a clip of some of the streeters you did, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of that.
She and her lawyers will use all means to delay the process because they have enough money to do that. She also have the right to do that. But I believe our rule of law, our foundation of legal system, and the only outcome they can earn more time, but they will never change the outcome. Yeah, I believe that.
I knew our independent judicial system would do it, but still worry about this propaganda expert China would do something, would corrupt again. But they did the first decision, extradite Meng Wanzhou. This is the good thing. because if our system doesn't have enough evidence, they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, so I don't feel surprised with this result at all. Yeah, should be. Yeah, I'm proud of Canadian law.
The Canadians, they don't understand how serious infiltration of Chinese Communist Party in our society. It's not only in the municipal level, the government, also in our provincial government. And unfortunately, they had extended their influence to the federal level.
What do you think should happen with Huawei? Should we do business with them for 5G?
No, Huawei is very bad company. It is not normal company. It is king's son's like a company, not general normal company. So only this CPP's company.
Because we know the Huawei is a spy of the CCP, and they help CCP to do the digital surveillance in East Turkestan. We want them to be a meet on justice in Canada.
No Huawei in Canada! No Huawei in Canada!
You know, Sheila, what strikes me just watching that is the bravery of these protesters, because it's not like in North America where you get a bunch of Antifa thugs to show up and scream nastiness and then they run home to see how CP24 has covered it on the news. These people, I am assuming, Sheila, most of them, or if not all of them, don't have any relatives in China, because this Chinese regime has this nasty little habit of, if you are a dissenter, you disappear. And they do keep tabs on what people say, including expatriates. So I want to give a shout out for the bravery there. And also, Sheila, I want to ask you, was there any other media asking these brave individuals, their thoughts on maybe something that hovers close to political incorrectness? Because my experience with the last 5 Saturdays at Queen's Park, all the media does is come and take a long shot of the protest and just say, oh, by the way, there was a bunch of people demonstrating about something, and over to you, Madge, for the doggy report. What did you observe there, Sheila?
There's a lot in that question that you just asked me, because you commented on their bravery, and I have a story coming out about that. I think it's later on today or very soon, because I did a lot of work while I was on the ground, because, this is my first trip out, and I thought, you know what, I got to give the people what they're paying for. So let's make sure we get everything. And it was a real, I think, a moment in time. And I don't think people really understand, or, you know what, our viewers do, because they're really smart. But I don't think the Canadian public at large really understand what an important moment in time yesterday was, because our foreign policy was going to be dictated by this court decision. Are we siding with China going forward, and abandoning our allies and the rule of law and these treaties that we have with the United States, or are we embracing the rule of law and standing with our allies and doing the right thing, and this putting a crack in this Chinese influence that's going on in Canada and a lot in the lower mainland of BC?
Sheila, and make no mistake, your words are not to be trifled with. There will be blood, as the saying goes, because of that decision. There will be revenge enacted against China. I mean, for goodness sakes, when Trudeau finally acknowledged Taiwan, that resulted in the Panda Bear contract being canceled 3 years earlier, and a demand that the bears be sent back. Now that Meng didn't get her way out of this country as they confidently and arrogantly thought they would, there are going to be repercussions no matter how much this Trudeau Liberal government has sucked up to China during this pandemic.
Yeah, and for those protesters there yesterday, I don't know if producer Justin can find it or not, but if you stay tuned on the Rebel YouTube channel, you'll see it later on today. There was a lineup of Huawei executives and Chinese consulate officials. They're all dressed almost identical, like they weren't even trying to hide that they were big deals with the consulate. And they were lined up against the courthouse wall, maybe 5 feet from these freedom protesters. And I went and I caught them on camera taking pictures of the freedom protesters and these Uyghur activists, these Uyghurs who some estimates say that 1/3 of their entire population is being interned by the Chinese government. I mean, it is a real modern day Holocaust that nobody is paying attention to.
Yep.
And the Chinese state officials are taking pictures of Canadian human rights activists, because they are indeed Canadian human rights activists, braver than a lot of people, taking pictures of them on the steps of a Canadian courthouse to intimidate them and possibly use it against their families back home. And I asked one of the ladies there, a Uyghur lady, and I said, "Are you scared?" And she said, "Well, yeah, I am. They can't see my face because her face is covered there." But she said, "I have family back home. I don't know if they're okay. I don't know what's going to happen to them. Wow. But I've got to stand up for freedom here in Canada." And, you know, and she's a Uyghur. She's persecuted. Her family's being persecuted. And you know who she was standing up for? 2 Canadians. That's who she was holding up a sign. They were insisting that in all of this, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig are not forgotten. They were calling them our Michaels. And quite frankly, I was ashamed that the Uyghur community and the Chinese community had to do this alone, because where were the rest of us?
That is an excellent question. You know, Sheila, where are the usual suspects who clamor for social justice? They were completely absent. I mean, and talk about a hub of social justice activism, Vancouver,
yeah.
For goodness sakes. You're telling me none of the university students who aren't even doing anything, they're not even in class, no. They couldn't be bothered to come out. And the other thing you mentioned, I fear for the 2 Michaels, Sheila. I mean, you'd think, how can it get any worse? They're in little cells with a light bulb on 24/7. They've been there for over 460 days, I believe. But this malicious government, I wouldn't put it past them to turn the screws even further on those 2 individuals. And it's despicable. I mean, it just shows you the folly of appeasement. I mean, this is the country that's unleashed yet another pandemic on the world. Thousands and thousands have died, trillions and trillions of economic damage, and we have a government in place that continues to pander, continues to say things like, if you use the epicenter to describe the disease, you know, i.e. Wuhan virus, you're committing racism. Give me a break. You know, I would love to think that this isn't going to make the Trudeau Liberals grow a backbone, but I just see even more appeasement ahead. They just, you know, for whatever reason, and maybe it's all tied to Justin getting some kind of cushy UN position later when his tenure as Prime Minister is over, they will not take a firm stance against really the country that is the enemy to democracy right now in the world.
Yeah, and just to go back to your question about the other journalists, they did form a long shot perimeter from the sidewalk. They didn't go anywhere near the freedom protesters. I was in there like a dirty shirt because I wanted to ask them, you know, do you think Justin Trudeau is doing enough to protect Canadians from China? And they all said he's not, and he's not taking it seriously enough. That we don't understand just how bad it is. And that's why they're so adamant that Huawei cannot be allowed to get near our 5G network here in Canada, because they said Huawei is a telecom giant, but it is the telecom spy arm of the CCP. And it is being used right now to oppress millions of Chinese people. And we need to heed their warnings, and our politicians need to heed their warnings too. But yeah, going back to the other journalists, they didn't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that Justin Trudeau is doing a bad job. So they're not going to ask freedom activists how they feel about Justin Trudeau, but I did.
And before we get to the super chat, Sheila, just to connect the dots and add an exclamation point, The reason why these journalists aren't doing that is because they are bought and paid for by the Trudeau Liberals. You don't bite the hand that feeds, whether it's $1.5 billion to the CBC, $595 million to the print media, additional millions to the magazines, and on it goes. And by the way, that'll all be topped up because these are all pre-Wuhan virus handouts. These will all be topped up even more, folks, in the months ahead. You can guarantee that. So they're not going to bite the hand that feeds. And if Trudeau is sympathetic to China, well, actually not even sympathetic, he admires them. Remember, Sheila? This is the basic dictatorship that he admires in order to get things done. You think they're going to do a contrary narrative? That's what I call bad for business and maybe even a career-limiting move. In any event, Sheila, you have some super chats, I believe.
I do, and I'm wondering how today the mainstream media is going to twist itself into some sort of moral pretzel to describe the ethnic Uyghurs and ethnic Chinese protesting Canada's policies toward China and Huawei as racist against the Chinese. But guarantee they will. They'll find a way somehow.
So sad.
Yeah, those Chinese white supremacists are striking again. I think Vice had an article to that effect, by the way. Let's get into these super chats because we are not bought and paid for by Justin Trudeau. We are supported by viewers like you at home.
That's right.
We've got one from Kane Enmark, gives us $10 Canadian. How is Kean doing today? I was very upset watching the cop hurting him for no reason. It's not right for reporters in Canada getting beaten up. Canada is going down the same road as China. I'm just going to breeze through these super chats, and then we'll come back to Kean because I think we have a lot to talk about. And
100%.
If we stop here, we'll never get to the rest of the super chats. So I'm just going to try to catch us up, and then we'll talk about Kean because that is a whole can of worms.
It's amazing.
We've got one from Lisa P, $2 Canadian. Thank you, Sheila and David. You are the best. Oh, thank you very much. It's an honor to be able to do this work, actually. I was thinking about that on the way home on my long, long day. I got up at 3 a.m. and I got home at like 1 o'clock in the morning. But what a gift and what an honor. I am these things that I normally care about in my normal life. Government accountability, freedom, religious freedom, and I get to do that for a job. Like I get to advocate for persecuted Christians, persecuted Uyghurs, for freedom in the Chinese community. I get to do that, and that's my job. And I have this big platform, so I feel very lucky. So I guess thank you, boss, for hiring me.
And Sheila, I tell my kids that the definition of heaven on earth is if you can indeed be paid to do something that you love. Right? Yeah. And there's so many people just out of necessity. They go in the morning, they hate their jobs. It's a necessity. They have to put, the milk and bread on the table. But if you can ever find something that you love to do and get actually paid for it, that is heaven. And I'm with you. I just love it here at Rebel News. Well, mostly.
And that's not to say that it's not a hard job or a stressful job because we operate under like a microscope. Everybody is waiting for us to screw up or do something bad. They would love for that to happen. So we operate under this, like you feel like an ant under the magnifying glass all the time. That's just like the glare of everybody waiting for you to screw up. And we are doing hard things. We're traveling a lot. We're saying things that you're not supposed to say in the mainstream media, but everybody believes around their kitchen table. And so it's not to say that it's not a hard job. It's not to say that it's not a stressful job, but it is a pretty good job.
Yes.
I think we're pretty lucky.
Agreed.
We've got one from Lisa P, gives us $2 Canadian. How can we legally defy Parliament and stop Justin Trudeau? It's more and more looking like Justin Trudeau has appointed himself like a monarch. He's basically decided in a minority parliament, by the way, so one that should have the greatest checks and balances on power, that he doesn't need the opposition parties to govern. And he's basically set aside Parliament for the foreseeable future. And I'm old enough to remember when Stephen Harper prorogued Parliament so that he could deal with a financial crisis. Everybody had an absolute freak out. All the mainstream media commentators who don't really care that Justin Trudeau is basically seizing power to do whatever he feels like and spend as much as he wants, they were all ripping out their hair in 2008 when Stephen Harper did very much the same thing.
Yeah, I remember that, Sheila, very well. The so-called, that unholy trinity of the socialist, the separatist, and the citizen of France conspiring to basically do a soft coup. And what I always remember is people going, how dare Stephen Harper go rogue like that? And no, this is within the rules. He proroguing Parliament. Maybe it never happened in your lifetime, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. It was all done within the rules. But Justin Trudeau, you're right, Sheila, he's acting as though he does have a majority government. I mean, these orders in council, for goodness sakes. And who's got time for all that messy democracy stuff? And I go back to the China being the basic dictatorship that he admires. And he's kind of getting his way. And unfortunately, the worst thing I can say is it'll be an official majority government likely if there is indeed a fall vote called, as is the speculation right now, because of, I would say two things, apathy amongst too many Canadians, and B, those Canadians getting the Trudeau narrative via the bought and paid for media party and believing what they're reporting. So, and C, who is our savior? Who is our Stephen Harper of 2020? He or she ain't out there as far as I can tell, Sheila, but I digress. Yeah,
it's funny how many people only learned the word prorogue when Stephen Harper did it. However, it's done quite frequently in parliamentary democracies, and the media really doesn't care. But when Stephen Harper did it, that's when everybody learned the word and decided it was a bad thing. We've got one from Daniel Price, gives us $10 Canadian, and he salutes us. Thank you very much. We've got one from Sobieski. Sobieski gives us $5. I'd like to buy Kian a coffee for his courageous attempt to get into Trudeau's cottage press briefing theater. Yeah, isn't it theater? Because it's not real life. Like, it's not real life questions. It's all pre-screened, pre-approved, journalistic theater, isn't it? It's not really anything real happening there. It's just all for show. We've got one from Workman John, $10 Canadian, no super chat. Thank you very much. Donald Pollock gives us $2. Thank you, David, Sheila, and all at Rebel. Get Mad Canada. Yeah, I think that people do have to. I mean, there's a small minority of people who are really, I think, awake to what's happening here in Canada, but everybody else seems kind of complacent. Yep. We've got one from Ryan Rosti, $10 Canadian. Here's a donation for Kian. Keep it up. Prime Minister Blackface needs to pay. We can't be funding the Chinese military. It's insanity. Yes. Why are we doing business with the Chinese military virus lab? We've got one from Annalisa S, $6.99 Canadian. I was furious watching Kian being treated like a criminal the other day. I hope Rebels wins the court case to report. Keep up the great work. Yeah. Connie McDonald, $50. Thank you very much, Connie. Celebrating 2 new Rebel viewers today. Please wish my parents, Art and Linda, happy 54-year anniversary.
Wow.
Keep the pressure on, Rebel News. Great journalism. How is Kian? We'll get to that in a second. But first, happy anniversary.
Yeah. Tip of the hat.
Art and Linda. Here's to many, many more. Let's keep going. We've got one from Enoch O, £5. Good content you guys are putting out lately. Thanks from Israel. Oh, great. Thank you. Shalom. We've got one from Jason Singh, $5 Canadian. I delight in you guys. I'm very proud of you guys. Oh, thank you. Camille Rose gives us $13.99. I don't see a super chat. And C128 OPR, $5 Canadian. First of Mohawks pled guilty in Hamilton this morning. These are the Antifa thugs at the Bernier Rubin rally last September. I didn't know that was happening, but boy, it would have been great if we had somebody there to hear that pleading. Maybe David can scootaloo down there for the sentencing. Now, I think we're all finally caught up. We're like 24 minutes into the show. Now I think we should probably talk about what happened to Kian. What do you think, David?
Oh, absolutely, Sheila. If any of you out there haven't seen the footage already and you're saying to yourselves, What's this business with Kian? What happened to Kian? Well, we're going to shut up and we're going to let the video tell the story. Will you see this?
Go just yeah. Wait, ready? No. Oh, you're not going in.
No, I'm sorry. I use my battery.
No, not good.
Why is that? Are all of you members of the media okay with this? How the federal government is treating media in this country? You're going to allow them to pick and choose what reporters come in? Sheep. It's what you guys are.
Close P1.
So do we just wait here? Does it feel good censoring media in this country? This badge was actually good enough for the Hong Kong police force, and it's not good enough for you. Is that true?
I'm not answering any question right now.
Why is that? Did Justin Trudeau tell you that he didn't want any journalists that would ask difficult questions in there?
I'm not making any comments.
Why? Because you're ashamed?
Not at all. No comments.
Is this open to the public?
No, it's not.
It's not. Why am I here then?
I'm going to be warning you. Any disturbance, anything, you'll discord it out of the site.
How did I get in here if it's not open to the public?
You're not coming in, that's it. So.
But I'm in the Rideau complex.
You are.
This is where the Governor General lives. This is where the Prime Minister lives. How did I get in here? I got all the way here until a partisan political staffer said no, he's not allowed in.
I can escort you right now if you want me to.
I'd rather not.
Okay, so
I'm here within my rights.
There, okay.
Sergeant,
Don't turn off the microphone. I'll answer the question. Turn it off. Put it on the ground.
Sergeant Leduc, he says.
I'm in charge of all the security of this site, including Radio Hall and Prime Minister's residence, okay?
My legal counsel is telling me I don't have to put anything on the ground. This is Canada, not China, for
As long as you're on my ground, I can order you to do anything I want.
Sorry?
As long as you're on my ground, this is my site. I'm in charge of security
This
here.
is your site? See, actually, it's the taxpayers that own this building.
I'm in charge of security, and that's all I'm going to answer right now. There's no picture on the ground.
No picture on the ground?
You're not allowed to take any picture of the security advance here. I ask you to review your camera right now.
Sorry?
I'm going to ask you to review pictures right now.
You want to review my pictures?
If you don't show me, I'm going to ask you escort you out.
I'm not showing you my pictures, man.
Okay.
This isn't Hong Kong.
Okay, let's go. You're not welcome on this site.
I'm actually, Just let me in.
No, I'm telling you, being in charge of the site, you're not welcome. Okay? I'm going to ask you to leave or we'll be escorting out.
Yeah, I don't have an intention to leave. I want to ask
you have a car here?
questions. Sorry, what?
Do you have a car here or did you walk in?
I walked in.
Okay, let's go.
Are you going to arrest me?
I'm going to escort you out.
So he's not arresting me.
Okay, let's go.
Don't touch me.
Hey, well, it's not welcome on this side. Okay.
This is Ottawa, Canada, 2020, when Justin Trudeau is having his RCMP throw out a journalist for no reason, because I wouldn't show him my phone. I wouldn't show him what pictures I've taken. You're twisting my arm harder. How do you sleep at night knowing that you are leading to the death of this democracy? What was his name? Sergeant Leduc.
Nope.
I'm not resisting anything. You're just doing a bad job.
I'm not under arrest. You're just being escorted out.
I'm not under arrest, but you have your hands on me like this? What are you doing?
Are you going to walk free out of the site?
This is cute and all, but I'm not all that into you. I was allowed in here as a journalist, and then when a partisan staffer, a political staffer, says no, we don't want that particular journalist in here, you do his bidding. Laughing? You think this is a joke?
You know, Sheila, there's so many angles there, and I must say that I believe Kian Bexley himself has logged in to the live stream. The first thing that stands out is what a self-inflicted wound Sergeant Leduc did on himself, because this is the definition of overkill. This is the definition of getting a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito. Kian Bexley is already locked out behind iron gates. There is no chance, even with a zoom lens, which he does not have, or his cameraman does not have, of even seeing Justin Trudeau address the media scrum. He has been stymied at that point. But this loser of an RCMP officer, he can't handle that. He can't handle that Kean is politely asking him questions, and he decides to do things like he wants to review the footage on his cell phone. This idiot doesn't realize you need a warrant to get that information. And then look how brutally, look how he's twisting his arm to exit Kean out of there. This is absolutely despicable. And I think Kean said a hell of a point that he didn't have to go through this kind of bullshit in Hong Kong when he went over there to cover the protests. And here we have in Canada of 2020. I mean, I wasn't there, Sheila, but watching that made my blood boil, and I think I speak for the vast majority of our viewership who cherish things like freedom of expression and freedom of the press and freedom of speech. This is probably making their blood boil too.
Yeah. Just to reiterate, I think Kean is currently lurking in the live chat. So if viewers at home want to send a message to him, he's watching. So send your kind words to him, because what happened to him was absolutely atrocious. Yeah, I think that is probably the most poignant point that Kean made, is that the CCP-controlled Hong Kong police didn't do this to him when he was there reporting on the freedom protests there. That Justin Trudeau's personal police force is more strong-armed and authoritarian than the Hong Kong police force, at least when it comes to dealing with Kean Bexte. And there's another, I mean, Kean is so great at thinking on the fly and responding to things on the fly. When he said, "I'm not resisting, you're just doing a bad job," I don't think truer words have ever been spoken. That cop also, I mean, let's talk about how these police officers, when they think that they are intimidating journalists and telling us how to do our job, they always fall for the whole like, oh, no, I'm no longer recording, the microphone's off. They think that that's like a real thing, that we always go and turn the microphone off and turn the camera off. These Barney Fife cops always fall for that. You can't ask us to stop recording, and we're not going to. And we are going to lie and say we did. And thank God Kean and his cameraman didn't, that we got all that incredible footage and audio of Kean's civil rights being violated. Another point that I want to make, sorry, David, I know you probably have something very, very important to say, but the other journalists who all saw and heard what was happening to Kean, instead of a single one of them saying, whoa, what the heck? I don't want to participate in, like, they could have said, I don't want to participate in this if that's what's happening to other journalists. But they didn't even do that. They didn't even say, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't do that, and then go on to the press conference. There was not a single moment of pushback from any of those mainstream media journalists. They just looked at their shoes, averted their eyes, and headed in to get fed a bunch of pablum from Justin Trudeau. It was really atrocious. And I want to point out that that did not happen to Andrew Lawton and I in London last summer at the Media Freedom Conference when Freeland tried to keep us out. That didn't happen. And I think it's because those were not press gallery journalists, as in they are not the carefully groomed, carefully cultivated bubble of journalists that exist around Justin Trudeau. These were international journalists. I know one of them was from Vancouver. I actually saw her yesterday. They do work for mainstream media outlets, but they aren't in that insular, incestuous garbage can of the press gallery. And I think that was absolutely gross. They are not journalists. They are repeaters. They're not reporters.
You know, Sheila, there's a Latin phrase that translates into English as "who watches the watchers." And once upon a time, the watchers of the watchers were the journalists. It was the Fifth Estate. It was calling foul on the state itself when it was going out of bounds. But you saw them all meekly, like a herd of trained seals, silently go in. We dare not rock the apple cart. And you talked about Trudeau feeding pablum to the journalists. It's a two-way street, Sheila.
Oh, yeah.
Look at those questions, such as the one from that Reuters hack who said, Mr. Prime Minister, are you worried about burnout? And what about that other question? Mr. Prime Minister, what kind of shampoo do you use? Gee, your hair smells terrific.
Yeah.
And you know what I love, Sheila, was Trudeau beaming, his eyes opening, and he can't contain that Cheshire cat smile. And to me, that was like the lion tamer, right? Doing the big curtain dropping act where he's got these former kings of the jungle on podiums lifting their paws and doing little tricks like jumping through flamed hoops. He has completely domesticated these wildcats, and he's beaming. When he gets those questions, he is just saying, oh, all my training, all my bribing has come to fruition. Can you believe it? That's the impression I get when I look upon his face when I see those kind of questions being given our Prime Minister, Sheila. Questions that he knows Cian Bexley is not going to ask.
Those journalists, when they walked in, I was thinking to myself, I bet you 50% of them, if I had to guess, have their pronouns in their Twitter bio because they think that they are fighting oppression and fighting for civil rights. And when they see a real civil rights violation happening right in front of them, they didn't have the guts to even say, I think that's a bad idea. Like they couldn't express even a moment of outrage. And it just shows how fake they are. Yeah. And how they don't actually believe in social justice, because what happened to Cian was, I would say, if you care about social justice, then you care about charter rights, and they don't care about charter rights. And it's funny to watch the online outrage directed at Cian, because Cian got, his arm twisted and escorted out. They say, well, it's because you're not a real journalist. Because you said this, this, and this. Your personal opinions do not preclude you from being a journalist. They're actually protected in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That the press is free. When people make those arguments, it shows how, as a society, how brainwashed an entire section of it has become when it's their prevailing opinion that you have to agree with the government and not be critical of the government and not say things strongly critical of the government to be allowed into a press conference. Oh. That the government can just arbitrarily decide that you're not a journalist. This isn't China. We have a free press. And I think Justin Trudeau's Liberals are going to find that out the hard way, because we are fighting back. If people want to support the work that Cian does, fighting for the free press, we're taking Justin Trudeau to court. They can donate at letusreport.com and help cover our legal costs, because this is not ending here. This is going to be much, much worse and much, much bigger for the Liberals now.
And Sheila, I think it's even worse than what you just said. I was very briefly on Twitter looking at some of the comments from certain journalists, and I'll talk about one in specific, Jim Richards of News Talk 1010. Now, I like Jim. I actually gave Jim years ago a ride home in the Menzoid Mobile from a debate involving the late, great Rob Ford. And when he's doing the humorous thing, I think he's got a great sense of humor. I think he's a genuine good guy. But man, when it comes to the politics, he's drunk the Kool-Aid. And he took a shot at Cian, saying that the only thing missing from that, frog marching off the grounds was the de rigueur, I'm paraphrasing here, call out for money to fund the rebel. And I thought, oh, Jim, you know what? How dare you? Yeah, you know what? As Sheila said, we are asking asking for donations. We are directing people to go to Let Us Report, and it's up to them whether they want to open their pocketbooks or purses completely. But where, for the rest of the media outlets, it's even worse than Roger's old negative option billing. It's no option billing. We have to pay billions to the CBC. We have to pay hundreds of millions to all the rest. We don't get any say in it. So how dare you give a shout out about us asking for money when you yourself are the recipient of government money that nobody has a say in terms of the government giving it. I shouldn't say government money, Sheila, it's taxpayer money. And so as much as silence it speaks volumes in terms of these cowards in the media, saying something like that is just so over the line and so hypocritical, given the way all these media outlets are whores now. That's right, I said it, whores. You're getting money, and we don't have any say about where our money's going. So we'll continue, Jim, to ask for money. And if you don't want to give us anything, that's fine. But if you want to reach in and give us a couple of bucks, that's fine too. There, I said it.
Well, and as long as there's guys like Jim out there, I've got all the job security in the world that I can handle, because people are desperate for the other side of the story, people who are not bought and paid for by Justin Trudeau. I found another example of a really bad take, this time from a CBC journalist. Her name is Erin McInnes, and predictably, she's got her pronouns in her bio. And, you know, it's not science. It's not science. I don't have a crystal ball. I got a crystal brain. And she says about Kian, because she's replying to someone who saw the video of Kian and said, please inject this video right into my veins, like it's a narcotic. He so enjoys seeing a journalist frog marched out of a press conference like that, that he said that. And so instead of saying, whoa, we still got freedom of the press in this country, this CBC journalist jokes and says, at least he got some free PPE, assuming they slapped that little mask on him at the end before he made a fuss. Not a total loss for him. So it's a big joke. The things that we have to go through as rebel journalists, these reporters would never in a million years put up with it. And if they had to experience just a little bit of some of the hassle we go through just to do our job every single day, they'd quit, or there would be universal outrage in the mainstream media. But because it happens to us, they look at their shoes and shuffle into a press conference. It's horrible.
The double standard is appalling. And Mr. Producer just informed me, Sheila, about that specific tweet you just read out. She, he, they, zoi, zor, zit, whatever the pronoun is, has taken it down. So I guess lesson learned, right? Maybe before you write something, think about what you're writing so you don't demonstrate your inherent stupidity in writing something like that. Just absolutely horrible. And speaking of Mr. Producer, he's also barking in my earpiece. Super chats.
Super chats. Okay, so we've got one from Tara Lynn, gives us $6.99 Canadian, says keep it up. We've got one from Ali C, gives us $5. Thank you, Kian, for trying to report and hold Trudeau accountable. That's all we can do at this point. Yeah. We're going to provide these liberals a gut check and bring them to their knees with regard to freedom of the press. They think they had a fight on their hands before. Just wait. Yeah. Just wait. And you know what? There are people who are like, I don't even watch the Rebel, or I didn't watch Rebel News, but I'm curious about what they're doing that makes Justin Trudeau hate them so much. So, thanks for the Streisand effect, I guess, Justin Trudeau.
Oh, and Sheila, on that point, if I may interject, here I think is the appropriate response if you believe in free speech and freedom of expression and freedom of the press. I have seen some tweets that say, I don't like the Rebel, I don't like any of the reporters, et cetera, et cetera. Fine, that's okay, sticks and stones. But what happened was egregious. That should not happen in a country that has free speech. That's how free speech works, folks. Even if you don't like the messenger, you still stand up for him or her getting the message out. But most of those journalists going into Rideau Cottage, Sheila, they are, it's cancel culture. They promote it and they abide by it. So the idea of true free speech doesn't exist anymore for them. They pick and choose bits and pieces of appropriate free speech, because as much as we love diversity, when it comes to diversity of opinions, especially one particular political opinion, that's bad and it should be censored and canceled. And even if necessary, law enforcement should be called in. That is despicable.
I can't get over how stupid the Liberals are. And I know I should be used to it by now, but they've lost once in court to us. Yeah. They are in the middle of losing again in court so that we can get access to these press conferences. And then they frog march one of our journalists out of, this is open media.
Yep.
That's why Kean went. It's open to the media.
Yep.
And so he went because he's media and he has reported from around the world. And yet he can't report on his own prime minister with the other journalists in the country. So you know what? This just helps us. You know what?
It does.
If you don't like the rebel, this is how you get more rebel. This is how you get us. So
I can hardly wait to see the 5 government lawyers, or whatever the number is, on the taxpayer dime justify what happened to Kean Bexte, just for everything you just said, Sheila. It's just unbelievable. And by the way, I don't know if we have more super chats, but Mr. Producer says we do, but we do have some more Kean Bexte. We're going to do the super chats first, and then we're going to show you Kean Bexte trying to directly ask Prime Minister Trudeau getting out of his bicycle, which is carbon negative. No, what am I saying? His V8 powered SUV as he went into the House of Commons. But let's finish up those super chats first, Sheila, please.
Yes, I definitely can't wait to see our young upstart lawyers kick the crap out of Justin Trudeau's high-priced lawyers. I live for that. We've got one from Proud Boys Calgary, gives us $5 Canadian, says it takes a fool to not record their interactions with police or media. I want to grab a beer with Kean. Daily reminder, CCP must be destroyed. Yes, but you're going to have to add me to that beer date, my friend Justin. We've got one from Captain Picard, gives us $10 Canadian. Support for Kean, love Rebel News. David, keep the hat. I actually like it. Yeah, I do too, actually.
I shall make it so, Captain.
Yeah, but you have to put the press card in there. We've got one from Ian Tuck, gives us $20 Canadian. I don't see a super chat, but thank you very much. We've got one from Awake Canadian, gives us $10. Kean and all of the Rebel are our champions. You all are needed and appreciated beyond words. Thank you very much. We've got one from Andrew McAleese, $50 Canadian, and I don't see a super chat, but that is very generous. We've got one from Lisa Grassley, gives us $2.79. I don't see a super chat there, but also very generous. Every little bit counts. We've got one from ColorFab, $13.99 Canadian. I don't see a super chat either. We've got one from Bruiser Battersby, which sounds like a really great wrestling name, gives us $20 Canadian. I'd much rather willingly give money to real news outlets like Rebel than have my money stolen and handed over to the CBC so they can give me stories Rebel has already been covering for months. Thanks for fighting the good fight. Yeah, like how they just discovered planes are still landing at Toronto's Pearson Airport from China. And then David has been reporting on it for months and months and months firsthand. They didn't even send somebody to the airport, by the way.
Oh, like no. No. Why would they do that? That's messy.
No. All reporting happens from inside a cubicle in CBC's office. Okay, we've got one from David Anderson, gives us $2 Canadian, says you guys are on fire today, love it. Yeah, I'm fired up because I don't like seeing things happen to my colleagues. And by the way, let me just point out, the Conservative...
Oh, Sheila just froze on us, folks. But I heard the word conservative, so I'm going to pretend I know what Sheila was going to say. Maybe it was about...
I'm back.
You're back. Were you going to talk about little old me in Whitby in September?
Yeah, darn right. The Conservative Party of Canada is silent on this. Why? because they did the exact same thing to you. So they don't have a moral high ground here. They don't have a high horse to gallop off on. They literally did the exact same thing to you. So how can they attack Justin Trudeau for strong-arming journalists? They actually did worse because they slapped the cuffs on you and called the cops. Well, I would say it's equally as bad. So, if I hear a peep from them, I'm going to light them up.
No, you're absolutely right, Sheila. I was handcuffed and thrown over the hood of an SUV. Here's the aftermath. I'm still cuffed. I'm talking to some of the journalists there. I was happy that they were actually making a public record because I was only there with my selfie stick and my phone was somewhere on the ground at this point, Sheila, so I would never have had this footage. And they're all deciding what to do with me. And just to show that we're not anti-law enforcement, because those were members of the RCMP, when I said, so what's the deal? Am I going to jail? Are you going to charge me criminally for practicing journalism? They said, the way it works, sir, is we leave that up, the criminal charging, to local law enforcement. I don't know why. I thought the RCMP could charge people, but maybe they're so used to being bellhops at Roxham Road, they've forgotten how to file out a fine book. And when Durham Regional Police came, something like 5 cruisers, I give a tip of the hat to the Durham cops. They couldn't believe what they were called to attend. They thought that there might have been some attack on a man who might become the future prime minister. Instead, it's a journalist who was just asking questions, and they said, you are free to go. And I could tell without them saying it that they were just thoroughly embarrassed. And I felt bad for the Durham cops too, because I said, sorry guys, that you're wasting all these police resources when there's true crime happening in Durham. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The Conservatives, I guess, given their past behavior, they can't get on any moral high horse about this, which goes back to my point number C about why there'll probably be a Justin Trudeau Liberal majority government if an election is called in the months ahead. We don't have a viable alternative. We have Liberal and Liberal light, and I can't really tell the difference on many issues anymore, Sheila.
Yeah, just another self-inflicted wound on the Conservatives, just shooting themselves in the foot. They could easily be running with this, painting Justin Trudeau as a dictator for doing these sorts of things, except they actually did it themselves too. Yeah. So, we've got one from Daniel Price, gives us $20 Canadian. Free speech, freedom of the press. Yeah, and by the way, David, your hair looked really nice in that video of you getting arrested. We've got one from...
Oh, those were the days, when you could get a haircut.
In the frame.
Sheila, it's amazing. Toronto in 2020, I can openly buy and smoke marijuana wherever I am, but to find a barber, you got to go behind a bush and do a whisper. And there's a guy down on 30 seconds. Wow, what a world. That's my saying right now. I got to give a shout out to the Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West, when she's doused with that water and melting right before Dorothy, and all she can say is, what a world, what a world. I feel her pain. And Mr. Producer says, enough with the Oz references. Let's do more super chats.
We've got one from Patricia Maskey. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. $10 Canadian says, fight for freedom. We definitely are. Tame Thing gives us $2.79 Canadian. I don't see a super chat, but thank you very much. Okay. Viking Insane. First, Justin Castro takes your guns, but then more will be taken. Time for a real constitution, one that cannot be infringed by communist tyrants like Prime Minister Castro. When I look at the RCMP, those are the people who are going to be taking our guns. And then you see that cop that manhandled Kean, and you're like, I don't know. This is all just going to be mishandled. We've got one from John Veldkamp, gives us $100 Canadian, and says, thank you. No, thank you. Thank you. That's so generous. We've got one from 321 Biz Development, $2.99 Canadian. I don't see a super chat, but that's very kind. We've got one from Ken Tate, gives us $20 Canadian. Can't stomach 1010 anymore. That's the 1010 Toronto radio station. Tory himself fit in there quite well after all. Can't even stand AM 640 anymore either. Gutless, clueless, no credibility. Keep up the fight, you guys. It's 630 Ched in Edmonton and 770 in Calgary, former conservative radio stations, and then they sort of had a purge of the Conservative staff over time, and I don't even want to know what their listenership is anymore. Now that people have other choices.
And Sheila, that's not you just theorizing. I can tell you, maybe I'm saying some inside baseball here, but I used to be on a regular guest for almost a decade on AM 640. I was on John Oakley's Media and the Message panel every Thursday. Every Friday was Charles Adler and so on. And when John Oakley was reintroducing his panels, I was evidently one of his number one picks for his daily panels, and he got the message from management. See, this is how it works, folks. And they said, that guy, meaning me, doesn't even get in the door. What did I do? Did I get charged criminally with pedophilia? Did I libel or slander somebody on air? Nope. I just have a difference of opinion. And that's why when you tune in to these over-the-air stations in Canada right now, Sheila, all the color, all the humor, all the excitement has been squeezed out of them. And that's why I'll tell you, I have a satellite radio, because there are people on Canadian radio right now, if they don't get off the air soon, I'm going to stop breathing it.
Yeah, all these panels that you see on TV and that you hear on radio, it's just a bunch of lefties agreeing with each other about a boring opinion. How fun. That doesn't inspire me to tune in. Okay, we've got one more super chat, and then we got to get to Kian. Yes. Kian will not be stopped. You cannot contain the Kian, so we have to get to that.
It's like the rhino.
Yes. We got one from Zen AX, gives us $2.99 Canadian. We got safety circles in Trinity Bellwoods now. Yeah, you have safety circles, and also I noticed your mayor is wishing everybody a happy menstruation day. And I'm not even joking, he tweeted about it or some crazy day like that, but I'm sure it's Happy Menstruation Awareness Day or something.
What? And are you serious?
David, I could not make this stuff up. He said something along the lines, like the press release that he tweeted out about it said something about wishing all people who menstruate a happy menstruation day or something like that. People who menstruate. Do you mean women and girls?
I thought that, like giving birth, I thought we surrendered that to womankind, but let's see. Oh my God, Menstrual Hygiene Day?
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? The period what does this even mean, Sheila?
I don't know. I'm a woman and I don't know. And I don't appreciate any of this. Can we all just never talk about this again? The last person I want to talk about periods with is Mayor John Tory. It just sounds, no, he's like just your weird uncle, nosy weird uncle. No thanks. Let's get to the clip of Kian, because I cannot wait to change the topic here. Let's get to the clip of Kian, who will not be contained and will not be deterred. If you stop him from getting to the Prime Minister to ask a question, he's going to work hard and still do it. So, producer Justin, let's roll that.
Front steps of Parliament right now. This is the House of Commons right here to my left, and Justin Trudeau is going to be showing up very shortly for the last meeting of the House of Commons. It's a committee meeting regarding the pandemic, and we're expecting Dr. Tam to show up along with Justin Trudeau and a few MPs. And I have this petition here of over 50,000 Canadians calling on Justin Trudeau to fire Dr. Tam. And we're just going to see what we're able to do. We're not sure how this is going to work because Parliament isn't really operating and functioning as usual. So we'll see who we can talk to. Stay tuned.
You want to stay back from the arrival, though? Okay.
We'll be with the other reporters.
They all have accredited hill passes to be up.
This is public space, so
yeah.
I've never had a problem before.
Just I ask you not impede.
Certainly.
All right.
Buddy, step back. Buddy, step
Yes.
back.
Move back, sir.
Buddy, step back.
Sir.
Yeah, you can't be there, dude.
Move back.
Move back.
Move back. Sir, move back.
Prime Minister, why are Canadians funding research done by the Chinese military? Trudeau, answer. I noticed you changed your mask from the black one. Justin Trudeau.
You know, it's funny, Sheila, maybe I'm overthinking this, but I think there was a deliberate strategy in having a female RCMP officer stand in front of Kian, because if he tried to, they're doing this little, dodge 'em kind of game to get some space. If he had brushed up against her and she had fallen or anything like that, you know how that's going to be played out in the mainstream media, right? Again, there's the Prime Minister who told us, in 2015 when he was first elected, this was going to be the most transparent government in history. He won't answer questions. He won't accredit journalists who ask tough questions. What a sham.
I do love, though, that Kian's tenacity.
Yes.
If he's not going to be allowed to sit with the other journalists and listen to Justin Trudeau's canned responses, well, he's going to go and get it another way. And that's work. That was real journalism. That's what journalists used to do. They used to find the politicians, catch them off guard, and ask them a question they're not prepared to answer. And that's what journalism used to be. And Kian's doing it, and everybody else is just an undeclared press secretary of the Prime Minister's office. And did you notice there that Justin Trudeau, the perfectly timed, swing of his jacket over his shoulder, like he's some sort of Sears catalog model? I've never seen a man do that isn't in an advertisement for a jacket or Justin Trudeau. Have you ever just swung your jacket over your shoulder?
No.
He's got 100 handlers. Leave your jacket in the car, give it to one of your handlers to bring it in if it's too hot, but to sling it over your shoulder all nonchalantly as you're walking into work, nobody does that. That's just more staged baloney from Justin Trudeau that he can't even be warm in seasonal weather without turning it into some sort of photo opportunity.
Yeah, as if that SUV didn't have the air conditioning blowing full blast, right, Sheila? But you know what? I just wonder, as you saw, Kian asked a tough, albeit very relevant and very concerning question, which of course the Prime Minister's not used to and he doesn't get at his daily scrums. I wonder if Kian had said, hey, Mr. Prime Minister, what shampoo are you using for that beautiful hair? Maybe Trudeau would have stopped in his tracks. Well, listen, kid, Pert Plus is the one for me. It's got the conditioner built in. What else do you want to know?
Kian's got to show up to these things with some rainbow socks and a Sharpie and say, hey, Mr. Prime Minister, can you sign my Pride Parade socks? And when he stops to do it, hammer him with the question. You gotta bait him in. He's like a skunk, and you have to put the tuna in the skunk cage to get the skunk to come in and catch him. That's what these Pride socks are. They're the tuna can in the skunk cage.
Or maybe you could have asked him about John Tory's Menstruation Day. Maybe Trudeau could weigh in on the behalf of people kind and those who are identifying with having a period right now. Like Jonathan Yaniv.
All of this is I don't like anybody talking about menstruation, but specifically men over the age of 50, yourself included. We just need to move on from this, and we really should, because it is 2 minutes past the hour. I also, just before we go, I want to just mention a couple things. If people want to support our petition to kick Huawei off Canadian 5G networks, and that the government should absolutely not be doing business with the telecom spy arm of the Chinese CCP, they can sign our petition at banhuawei.com if you want to support my trip out to BC to tell the other side of the story and to tell the real stories of the Chinese freedom-loving community, these Canadian patriots. I think the best way to do that is at helprebelnews.com. And I think this is the most important one. If you want to support the work we're doing to hold Justin Trudeau accountable for his violations of press freedom in this country, please go to letusreport.com. Trudeau has all the high-priced lawyers he can get his hands on. And we've got hardworking, competent, young upstart lawyers who are going to kick the daylights out of Justin Trudeau in court. But that isn't cheap. So if you want to support us there, please go to letusreport.com.
Yeah, that's going to be a Texas street fight in a cage when that trial's heard. But Sheila, before we sign off, Mr. Producer's barking in my ear that his margarita pizza has arrived and it's already after 1. And we have one more super chat and then we got to go.
Okay. One last super chat from Derek G. gives us $20 Canadian. He said, I'm amazed by the lack of citizens' political activism in response to these current events. What are influence and able peoples and their individual responsibilities, lawyers, policemen, entrepreneurs, business owners? You know, I have seen online that retired RCMP officers are absolutely appalled by how Kian was treated. Those were some of the most retweeted and responded to comments about how Kian was treated. But our conservative politicians, they can't comment because they're equally as bad. Business owners, they're inclined not to comment sometimes because they end up being on the receiving end of the cancel culture mob. So, it falls on us to fight back, and we rely on the support of people like you, Derek, and your generous super chats.
Yeah, thank you very much, Derek. And I'm sure Peter MacKay will send a press release out later today, Sheila, saying, I'm not going to condemn what happened to Kian, but I'm not going to support what happened to Kian.
And then he'll delete it and apologize.
That's right. Anyways, folks, sorry, we've run out of time. Quickest hour on the internet. Sheila Gunn-Reid, thank you so much. And we will see you back here again on Tuesday. In the meantime, have a great weekend and stay safe.